We're going to be doing day 3 of the Cold War PowerPoint. You already listened to day 1 and day 2, and now on day 3. Next question we come up to is going to be question 8. Question 8 says, where did revolts against communism occur during the 1950s and 1960s? And then what was the Soviet response each time? This is in your study guide. All right, so in Eastern Europe, it's controlled by the Soviets. Revolts in Eastern Europe, East Germany, Poland, squashed by the Soviets with violence. They sent troops in. Anytime there was a revolt, the Soviet Union sent troops in to put the revolts down. Stalin died in 1953. Communists are kept on. They put someone else in charge. All right, not as ruthless as Stalin, but still a totalitarian regime. Also, Hungary, another one for question 8. Revolts in Hungary. Soviets sends troops in again, thousands killed. All right. When the people revolted, they had small arms, they had rifles, pistols, but then the Soviets usually sent the tanks in. And if you have rifles and pistols, they don't do well against the tanks, even though sometimes they make Molotov cocktails and throw them at the tanks. But tanks trumps rifles and pistols all the times. 1968 was the biggest one. People revolted, and then they almost got to take over their own government, and the Soviet Union sent the tanks in, put the revolt down. Again, thousands killed. All right? We're going to have an arms race now. As we know, both sides of the atomic bomb, they try to keep up with each other. This came to the term of mutually assured destruction. All right? MAD, they called it. What mutually assured destruction meant was that neither side can go to war, United States or Soviet Union, because if either side went to war, they will both be completely destroyed. All right? So they use the nuclear weapons as a deterrent. You see from our graph at the bottom here. At its height, the United States had about 35,000 or so nuclear weapons. Russia had about 45,000 or so nuclear weapons. That's been going down because of different treaties. All right? Still, both countries have enough to destroy each country multiple times over. All right? So the term MAD stands for mutually assured destruction. And that means either country can destroy the other country and basically the whole world with the weapons they have. So neither can go to war with each other. That's why it was a Cold War, because they went to a hot war, everybody would die. You see our political cartoon here. It says on the nuclear weapons, on no account to be used because the enemy might retaliate. So they can't use nuclear weapons. And our political cartoon, you show the soldiers are back to using bows and arrows because those are weapons you can use, and atomic weapons you can't use. Duck and cover. We usually show this video in the class. This link's not going to work here. Take it when you get a moment. Go on the YouTube. Search in duck and cover. You'll see Bert the Turtle, and it'll show you how in the 1950s, if you're in school, instead of doing fire drills, tornado drills, you would do a nuclear war drill, and you would duck and cover, basically hide under your desk, hide against the wall, and try to protect you from the nuclear weapons. So when you get a chance, head over to YouTube, type in duck and cover. They'll pop up. It's about a 5-minute video in black and white, and it shows you Bert the Turtle showing the children to duck and cover. In addition to the arms race, we had a space race in the Cold War. All right, in 1957, the USSR launched the first satellite, Sputnik. All right, Sputnik was the first satellite in space. Its definition 11 on your definitions there in the study guide. The first satellite in space. Basically, you see right there, it's about the size of a basketball. It has some antennas going off it. There's a battery in there and a radio, and basically it just sent out a radio message, beep, beep, beep. So it flew over the United States. It sent out beep, 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 and then it just proved that it gets something into the atmosphere. It terrified people that the Soviet Union has something in space flying over, and every few times a day it's flying over the United States and it's going beep, beep, beep. All right. There's a replica of this at the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. You can see it. But this was, it showed the United States that they were behind the Soviet Union in the space race. All right. And this led to a race in space to see who's going to be the first ones to get to the moon. All right. So in response to Sputnik, the United States created NASA, National Aeronautical and Space Administration, and we lost our first satellite in 1958 to try and keep up. Then the Soviet Union had the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin, in 1961. And we had to have our first man in space after that. And again, it was a race to get to the moon. So we, as you probably know, the United States had the first man on the moon, July 1969. Apollo 11, Neil Armstrong, you see the pictures there? All right. And this was like one of the most watched things in history. Everybody around the world was glued to the TVs in July 1969, watching this to see if the mission was going to go okay, if people would be able to land on the moon, and then it was a very big deal. Since then, there was a few more missions to the moon, all right, and we haven't been back to the moon since the early 70s. All right, there are now planned missions to go to the moon. China's planning to go to the moon. I think the United States is planning to go back to the moon. And so Russia never actually went to the moon. They said well, after we got there that they didn't plan to go to the moon anyways, and the United States wasted their money, but the United States beat them. That's why they were saying that. We had different wars. We had the wars in Korea, wars of Vietnam. Okay, these are called proxy wars where the United States was fighting, but the Soviet Union was not fighting directly. They were supplying weapons to the other sides. All right. So the Cold Wars flared in actual wars, but supported by superpowers. All right. You see Korea up here, North Korea, South Korea. They were separated. All right. At 38th parallel, Vietnam's over here. All right. China borders both of them. They're able to get aid from China and the Soviet Union through China. So, first part of question 9, North Korea. From 1950 and 1953, this is the first time the United States tried to use the policy of containment. They wanted to contain the Soviet Union, contain communism. Okay, so on your left, on your study guide, North Korea supported USSR, supported China, both communists. On your right, supported the United Nations, supported the United States. All right, we have 54,000 U.S. troop deaths on containment work. All right. In the war, when it first started, the United States did have some troops in South Korea. They were not prepared. The North Koreans almost captured all of South Korea. All right. And then General Douglas MacArthur from Japan took the Marines and invaded Incheon and forced the North Koreans back towards the Chinese border. China sent a message through the UN saying, hey, if you get close to our border, we're going to attack. The United States didn't believe that. And when the United States got close to the Chinese border, China sent millions of troops over the Chinese border to help the North Koreans. And then some famous battles like the Trojan Reservoir, where it was like negative 30 degrees, and the Marines and soldiers had to fight in negative 30 degrees weather as they were retreating from the Chinese because they're so badly outnumbered. And then it went back and forth. And then in 1953, they had a ceasefire and basically went back to the borders that was before the war. And officially, North Korea and South Korea have never declared peace. They've officially been at war since 1950, and they never had a peace treaty. All right, we talked about Kim Jong-un and what's going on in North Korea before, and it's still a lot of legacy of that. If you see here on the first part of South Korea, support the UN. United States went with the UN. It was a UN war. Even though the United States supplied most of the troops, a lot of other countries, Britain, Canada, Australia, Greece, Turkey, even Ethiopia, sent troops to fight on the side of the UN against the communists. It was a war that lots of countries, even though the United States had the most troops and the majority of the troops, other countries sent troops to help out. All right. This leads us to the domino theory. This was a theory that believed that if one country fell to communism, all the other countries around them will fall to communism. And so this is one of the reasons the United States used for fighting in Vietnam and fighting communist Vietnam. So if Vietnam fell, the next country next door, Laos, will fall, then Cambodia, Thailand, Burma, India, Bangladesh, and they'll all fall. That was a theory. We saw after the Vietnam War ended that all this did not happen. So our next question, what you have about Vietnam, number 10. So again, North Vietnam, South Vietnam. North Vietnam is communist like North Korea. South Vietnam was democratic. So North Vietnam communist ruler was Ho Chi Minh. They have supported China from 1964 to 1975. All right. South Vietnam, democratic. Their ruler was Ngo Diem. He has 57,000 U.S. deaths. Okay. In this case, containment failed. Just like Korea, there was other countries helping out in smaller numbers in Vietnam, like Australia, New Zealand, some other countries. All right. And so after the United States left Vietnam, I'm thinking 1972, when we made a peace treaty with North Vietnam, and North Vietnam promised to not invade South Vietnam. So a little bit later, North Vietnam invaded South Vietnam. U.S. air power from the aircraft carriers pretty much bombed all the attacking North Vietnamese troops and stopped them. They went back in 1975. A couple years later, the United States public and new president did not want to have anything to do with war again in Vietnam. And when North Vietnam invaded South Vietnam in 1975, South Vietnam fell because there was no support for the United States. All right, and now it's just country of Vietnam. It's not two countries anymore. All right. So you see here some of the pictures. Again, North Vietnam, South Vietnam. You got the demilitarized zone, and then this was like one of the first, helicopter wars. You see United States use helicopters a lot. It was a war that one of the first times that journalists, the media, TV, news was able to get pictures and video back very quickly to the people at home. So a lot of times people could see the battles going on at home a day or two later. All right. Average age of a soldier in Vietnam was 19. All right. That's only a couple years older than most of you. Average age of a soldier in World War II, a U.S. soldier, I believe was 26 or 27. So the soldiers are younger. All right. There was a draft going on. And there was ways to get out of the draft. Basically, if you went to college, you can get out, you were not drafted. You call it deferred. All right. So they said a lot of the poorer people who couldn't afford college were getting drafted, and the rich people could afford to not go to could afford to go to college for not getting drafted. All right. There was, as you know from last year, a lot of protests against the war. All right. Especially as the war went on later and later, there was a lot of protest. And so as we saw, you learned a lot about Vietnam last year. You see the helicopters. All right. The helicopters changed the war. Unlike Korea, unlike World War II, World War I, it was not a war. The United States tried to take land and push the enemy back till you got to the capital, then you won the war. It was what they call a war of attrition. The United States and South Vietnam didn't really take land. They tried to attack the North Vietnamese soldiers and kill as many soldiers as they can, and then go back to their base. And so anywhere they basically were able to attack the soldiers, North Vietnam, they would come back. And so North Vietnam lost a lot more troops than the United States did, but their goal was to outlast the United States, and sooner or later they would leave, and that's what happened. You see some of the terrain, all right? A lot of it is jungle. It was hot. It was wet, all right? Lots of humidity, mud. It was not a good place. If you were a soldier, you had a 1-year tour of duty. You stayed there for 1 year, then you got sent back home. This is different from World War I, World War II, Korea, where you stay with your unit until the war is over, or your unit got sent back home. So in this one, you spent a year and you got sent back home. That means your unit might keep changing and changing up as more people came and left. This guy is known as a tunnel rat. You see him there. He has a .45 pistol in his left hand. He has a flashlight in his right hand. His job was to go into tunnels that the North Vietnamese made underground to hide out, store stuff, attack people. And so when they found a tunnel rat's job was to go down there with the flashlight and the .45 and see and explore the tunnels. As you can probably imagine, this is a very dangerous job. If you turn your flashlight on, you can see, but then the people can see you. It was a very dangerous job. A lot of these people came back, had a lot of PTSD from going into the tunnels. You can see what they call the 1,000-yard stare on this young soldier's eyes from all the battle. Except civilians, the South Vietnamese civilians, they took a lot of casualties in the war from both sides. You see some of our soldiers. This is from, you can see, this is from journalists. So like I said, they were walked down, they had a video camera right down through here, and these images will be beamed home to the United States that day or next day, and they can, and unlike World War II or Korea, it might take a week or so to get the messages home, or 2 weeks. In Vietnam, the film came back very quickly because of satellites and such. This is the end of the war, 1975, when the North Vietnamese were about to capture the capital of Saigon. This is the U.S. Embassy, very famous. Anybody who was United States citizen was able to go to the embassy, and they were being able to take off, be evacuated from helicopters from the embassy. If you were working for the United States, and Vietnamese, they try to get home too, try to leave too, because if you're someone who worked for the United States, worked for the South Vietnamese government, you were considered an enemy by the North Vietnamese government, and you would be arrested when they came and captured the capital. So you have these scenes of people mobbing the embassy, trying to get out. They were able to get all the U.S. Citizens out. I saw on the video a couple years ago one of the last Marine sergeants who was there providing security. His captain came down and told him, "Okay, last helicopter's coming. Get your 10 Marines, go up to the roof. We're leaving." And the sergeant said, "What about these 150 Vietnamese civilians here? They're still here. They're going to be arrested and maybe be killed." And the captain said, "Well, the last helicopter's coming. We're leaving. Tell them another helicopter's coming after us. Tell them to wait." And he had to go lie to the people. And then he went to the roof and left. And he says that still haunts him to this day. Here's some of the protests going on. Okay, a lot of the people at home were against the war. They didn't see why it would be in the United States' interest to be fighting thousands of miles away in Vietnam. This is some, returning soldiers. And now we're going to the Cold War in the Middle East. All right. So we had Arab states basically against Israel. Gamal Abdel Nasser was ruler of Egypt in the 1950s. He nationalized the Suez Canal. That means Egypt took control from Britain. All right. Egypt has supported the USSR. They built the Aswan Dam, a very large dam to hold back the water to supply electricity. When they built the dam, they actually had to move some of the ancient Egyptian artifacts out of the way before they be submerged in the water. They went to war twice. Egypt went to war twice with Israel. U.S. supported Israel at that time, the only democracy in the Middle East, and an enemy of Egypt. You see the Suez Canal, we talked about this before, it goes right through from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, cuts off weeks from the route around Africa, and saves hundreds of thousands of dollars. When NASA nationalized the Suez Canal, it was owned by Britain. NASA said, "We're taking it over." Why should Britain own it? It's part of Egypt. They did that. Then Britain, France, and Israel went to war, took the canal back, but the United Nations made the Britain and France give the canal back to Egypt. Aswan Dam, as you see, very large dam, dam of the Nile River, so they can make electricity. We had the war versus Egypt, Sinai War. All right, this is one of the first ones. And as you see here, there's a lot of wars. Sinai Peninsula is right here, and right here. And then this is one of the wars between Egypt and Israel. There was a whole bunch of them. All right. And that's my final slide. Mr. Maloney will pick up the last part, day 4 of the Cold War PowerPoint, and you get that from him. All right, make sure when you get done with your study guide, send it to us through Schoology, through email, and we'll be able to give you feedback on that. All right, everybody stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.